morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone. Today with my friend Neil Gaur. Hi, Neil.
Hey, Kathy, so good to be here with you.
Yeah, well, I got to be with you just a couple of months ago. We got to have dinner together and hike a little. That was fun.
That was great.
So, everyone, for if you don't know about Neil Gaur and his incredible site, Portal to Ascension, today is a chance for you to really learn more about what's in it for you and how this opportunity to go to a site and see the collection of brilliant speakers and brilliant thought processes that are available at Portal to Ascension that Neil started. It's a global conscious event production company that's been producing and uniting visionaries since 2008. And I know that I may have not found it until 12 2012 or maybe later even, but I'm a huge fan. So Neil, why don't you share a little bit, if you don't mind, about your journey so people can understand your journey to having this vision to start this incredible
Sure.
portal.
Yeah. So, I as a kid, I just felt that something was off on the planet. And I always like to put a little disclaimer in here. I came full circle to realize nothing is off on the planet, believe it or not. Even though things look crazy and chaotic, I feel that everything is happening the way it should. We're a sign of the times. We were in a dip in consciousness. Everything manifested in the way the level of consciousness was destined to be on the planet. But as a kid, I felt that there was like a different way to live, and kind of just was like one of those weird outliers. And as a kid as well, most like a lot of people, a lot of kids, I guess, want to be an astronaut. But I guess I realized that now, in retrospect, I want to be an astronaut because of my deep connection to the stars. And actually, interestingly enough, my name is Neil, Neil, and I was named after Neil Armstrong, which is the first guy on the moon. So there was something there going on, right? And so as a kid, just kind of just felt there was something. I would think profoundly about things, like people dying, things like that. Those are some of the memories I have. I don't have too many memories as a kid because my childhood was very traumatic as well, which also was a catalyst for my future evolution into Portal to Ascension. And then when I fast forward until I was born in England, I moved when I was 12 years old to the US, and I was born and raised Hindu. And a lot of people watching this into consciousness, as you know, Hinduism, mantras, chanting, Om, the Hindu gods, are all so deeply ingrained in this new age consciousness world, right? Even when it comes to UFOs, ETs, and CE5 meditation, right? Obviously from India. But I did not really see any of that because most Hindu people, not all of them, I'm glad to say that I found out recently there's a huge awakening happening with Hindu and Indian people, is that they followed their religion very blindly. And you can't blame them because what happened was we went to a dip in consciousness. And what many of our ancient religions that used to be ways of life, Hinduism was called Dharma, which means Dharma translates to laws of the universe. It was never a religion, it was a philosophy on laws of the universe. But then it became very externalized because we went into the Kali Yuga. In the Kali Yuga, everything becomes ritualistic and contractual. So if I do this and this and this, God will give me this. If I fast on this day, my husband will be fine. And this is now my own experience. If we say Hanuman right here, Chalisa, the Hanuman Chalisa, which is the mantra for Hanuman, is a whole song. 108 times every Saturday, my son will no longer get in car accidents. That was my one, right? My mom was doing that for years with me. Every Saturday, I'd have to chant this 108 times, and every song was like 3 minutes long. So imagine that. It was like a long, long time. And so so being raised Hindu, I just never really thought about God. I don't know like how it is in other religions, but you're not really you're doing things culturally. It's about being accepted, it's about being a part of a group. Maybe kind of similar to the fact that for 1,000+ years, many people followed Christianity religiously blindly, but they didn't even have a translation of the Christian Bible for them to read. right? How are they going to have a relationship with God if they can't even read the Word of God, but they're just told to follow blindly, right? So that's
Right.
what it was for me. And then when I was, but my whole childhood, I celebrated Christmas. I celebrated Jesus during Christmas time. I watched movies on Moses, King of Kings, because a lot of like out of India Indians, they celebrate Christmas, and a lot of like even more, a lack of a better term, more educated, um, families in Indian community as well. They even have more of an understanding scientifically that isn't so blindly that many religions could have existed, right? Because our ancient text in India doesn't say that there was only one religion. It's one of the only religions in the world that doesn't say that there's only one. It says there have been many for many different reasons. So, because of that, having that as a foundation, I started seeing the similarities between Christianity and Hinduism. But I'd been told, because I went to Catholic school for 1 year, I was living in England. Um, I was told that Christianity and Hinduism evolved separately because polytheistic, even though Hinduism really isn't polytheistic, and monotheism both evolved individually from each other and have no similarities, right? But I was starting to see that that's not the case, that there seems to be a lot of similarities here. And if there are similarities, what are they? And the first one that came to me was the Krishna and Christ connection. There is not a coincidence at all that both of them have Christ at the beginning of the name, just like Christos in ancient Greece. They all seem to be the same individual or a different individual with the same story. Or very similar story. So I was seeing all these similarities between Krishna and Christ, and I was like, wait a second, is Yeshua, Jesus Christ, is he actually not a real person, but a remake of the Krishna story taken and hijacked into Christianity and rewritten? That was my first thought. I came full circle, and I now feel like he also existed, but I was seeing that similarity there. So I decided when I was 17, 18 years old, 2000, 2001, I was like, let me look for the root of all religion. Is there a root for all religion? And that began my search through the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, anything I could really get my hands on, different articles and scriptures from the ancient world. And as I was doing that, I quickly stumbled upon what's known as the Sumerian scriptures, being told to us to have been is the key right there, not actually have been, but told to us to have been the oldest written scriptures in the world, right? And they are pretty old. And these scriptures seem to be the source text for many ancient cultures. Many ancient cultures have taken from it, especially a lot of information from the Old Testament comes from there. For example, God created us in his image and his likeness. Comes straight from the Sumerian scriptures, right? So I started looking through this, and instead of finding information about God, I started finding the original text was talking about beings from the stars and saying, and not even one God, it was all plural. But for some reason, the S was taken out at the end of God's and it was made into one God. And it was saying the gods created us in their image and their likeness, that the gods came from the heavens down to earth, seeming like an extraterrestrial visitation, that the gods came from this planet, even. And I was like, either all religion is BS because it comes from a sci fi story from ancient cultures mythically coming up with fictional stories about beings from the stars, or maybe many, maybe not all, but many of our ancient scriptures and stories have something to do with some sort of visitation from advanced beings, because I'm seeing it right here to be this advanced visitation. And that's when it really began, like 2001, 2002, started going deep down the rabbit hole. And as I was going down the rabbit hole, all types of information came because I was fortunate enough to start from a full spectrum, right? Ancient civilizations, okay, that's one component of our consciousness that we've lost. The extraterrestrial connection to ancient civilizations, right? Now we got the UFOs and visitations. And then looking into the scriptures, you have the third component. How did they travel through space? What kind of information did they know about the quantum reality? What is the reality and consciousness really? So all three of them were all within 2002-ish came to me, and Jordan Maxwell, William Henry, Nassim Haramein, with the three main Jim Self were the four main people. Those four people where I started. And it took me down different types of routes. It took me down, whoa, oh my God, there's been bloodlines ever since ancient Sumeria. The fallen angels were hybrid extraterrestrials. The Illuminati exists. They've been trying to depopulate us, deep into conspiracies, from conspiracies to consciousness, and so that continued until around 2006. And 2006, what I did was I created an online group to explore these topics more. The online group was called 2012 Consciousness, Mind, Evolution, and Presence. And this group was just basically designed to have people join, and so we can have this discussion on what is going on. What does 22012 have to represent? What is consciousness? Who are we? What lies have been told to us? How do we reclaim all of that? Thousands of people started joining over 2 years, from 2006 to 2008. In 2008, the stock market crashed, real estate bubble in the US and actually in the world, and I lost my job as a financial analyst. And since I was already into all of this, I started going deeper into it, and I had a dream to change the group name to Portal to Ascension, and that's when Portal to Ascension was born, 2008. Summer, August 2008, I did my first event. It was a hypnotherapy and binaural beat event, and for 2 years, I just started nomading it, spiritual nomad, from San Diego to Orange County to San Francisco to Idaho to Iowa to Oregon to Seattle to Vancouver Island, back and down for 2 years, doing sound healing events, picking up spiritual nomads on the street in Mount Shasta and having them travel with me for 3 months, doing events with them, um, finding and meeting spiritual people I've been following on YouTube and creating extraterrestrial events, UFO events, ancient history events, randomly within weeks. And then when in 2011, I met one of the people I was following on YouTube that was one of the OG channelers on YouTube. He was channeling a being from Sirius, and then we started doing a year of the same exact tour, but just extraterrestrial channeling. And in that year, I did like probably close to 100 different channeling Q&As with it being from Sirius, where I was hosting the event, facilitating it, starting with sound healing, learning all this information, and then getting to closing this chapter off here. But then in 2012, that was the milestone. So 2008, one milestone, an awakening, spiritual awakening from conspiracies to consciousness was 2008 as well. It all was in alignment. I went from fear to realizing everything happens the way it's supposed to be. Big shift. Then, oh my God, this is happening to us. These beings are trying to kill us. They're trying to poison us. To, wow, thank you for doing what you've done. Because if you haven't done it in this world of amnesia, we would never have figured out how to wake up and see the light in this world. And then in 2012, that was the first real milestone with what I've created. So I did an event in Orange County, California, in Irvine, called 2012 called the Cosmic Reunion, right? Daryl Anka Bashar was the headliner there. I had a bunch of people that came from around the world, and it did pretty well. So I did another one in 2013, and it continued evolving, right? 2013, 2016. And since I'm in the flow of this, I'm just going to tell you the whole story. And and then 2016 came about. And 2016, I've been traveling around. I've been doing tours. I'd worked with Stephen Greer, doing his events and tours. Michael Tellinger, Paula Harris, so many people's events. I've been creating James Redfield, the author of the Celestine Prophecy. We've been facilitating his events, and I've become kind of like a production company for consciousness. But a lot of my own events, you have to travel, get hotels, you have to do all these different things that end up costing money. And then at the end of it all, I'm broke and I can't afford a place to live. And I'm married. I can't afford a place to live and I can't eat. So in 2016, I decided to stop Portal to Ascension. It was like the fifth time I decided to quit. And my friend said to me, "Hey, you can't quit. You need to do something to keep it going." So I decided to get a job as an SEO specialist at an engineering company and move everything from Portal to Ascension from in person to online, 2016. And it did very well. My first conference, Dolores Cannon was the headliner because I've been working with her for a few years. It did extremely well that after 6 months of working this new corporate job, I quit that job and I've never worked for anybody ever since. It's been full-time Portal to Ascension. Started with one event every month in 2016 online. Within 2 years, 2018, it became 100 events a year. In 2018, I reintroduced live events. We started doing tours again. We started doing conferences around the world once again. And now in 2025, after continuous growth, we do about 70 events a year. Maybe around 7 or 8 of them are live in person, whether it's a cruise, whether it's a conference in England, in San Diego, an expo, and then the rest of them is an online university. And we have over around 12,000 plus hours of presentations and over 4,000 speakers that I've worked with. And we have become a one-stop shop for consciousness. Yeah, so that's up until this moment, Kathy.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I knew part of this, but I didn't know that much of it. And it's amazing. You were being guided all the way. I mean, really
Mhm.
amazing. And you had the curiosity and the desire to know and meet these people and create a community. So you do, you said almost 70 events a year. Is that what you said?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I think you featured over 3,000 presenters over this
Mhm.
time. What do you think makes this community so unique?
There's a lot of different levels of it. First, we're the first, I would say, we're the largest consciousness production company in the world. There is no one that puts out as much content as we do. And even if there might be someone on YouTube who's doing a YouTube video every day, the range of spectrum of the way we bring content out, from music to events to cruise experiences to ancient civilization tours, we have such a wide spectrum of offerings. So that's one of them. And then the ability to interact with the speakers. So there's some people that do documentaries or different presentations and post it on this site as a subscription or maybe a course model. We're doing live webinars where you get to not only be a part of the live community group, but you also have to ask questions and interact with the speaker. And then we also give you unlimited access to the presentation. So we've created like a unique model that allows you to either be a part of the whole, everything we do in the year in different events, or to come based on event at a time. But I would say when it comes to something more um, personable and in a connective way, a lot of people say when they attend our events, they feel like they're sitting around a fireplace with family, right? So we create this really personable, human kind of approach to it all, where we're very vulnerable and share the story. Even in my email list, I send mission updates where I talk about what's going on with me, what's going on with the mission on a deeper level, rather than just being like a regular a company that's putting out content. We really reach out to people and create not only informational gatherings, but um, also experiences. Like I'm teaching a chanting workshop right now as well. So that ability to connect with each other is amazing. There's been also people around the world, like from India, from Kazakhstan, that have reached out to me, and they say they're really grateful because we also get to connect with people around the world in different areas and provide them a community by being on an online webinar where they can interact with other people in a place where they don't have any of this going on, or they don't have anybody they can talk to about this. So those are just some of the things I feel that people really get from what we're creating.
Beautiful, beautiful. So that is one of my questions about the international interaction. Do you see, it's been my experience that the US was kind of slow to the party as far as understanding spirituality and afterlife, and that this field is full of other information. Have you found that there's interest worldwide? You mentioned there's some people that are all by themselves and they're connecting in. But are you seeing any trends? I know that in New Zealand, Australia, it seems like a hot spot of ET and ancient history information. South Africa, England, but I just wondered if Europe or if you're in Colombia right now, if you're seeing that in South America come up. Uh, or can you tell us anything about what you're seeing?
Yeah. What I noticed was that the US had this influx of consciousness in like the mid 1900s, like 1950, 1960, 1970. And a lot of the movements actually started there. A lot of them actually in California. Um, a lot of it actually in either Laguna Beach or in San Francisco area. There was huge movements, a lot of spiritual gurus out there creating that consciousness there, and then the U.S. then exported that consciousness around the world, which is interesting because that consciousness came from elsewhere in the Eastern world, and where the Eastern world was maybe not so much focused on that, but became more religious and more in a blind faith mentality. And they took it to the US, and then the US kind of it cultivated and grew again, and now it's being exported around the world once again. And in regards to, am I seeing people wake up everywhere? Yeah, because thousands of people from around the world are always connecting, and I always love to ask where everybody's tuning in from. And I see a huge awakening going on. And even though some people are jaded and think that that's not the case, what I feel is everything that they do, whoever they are, that are putting in these wars against us, whether it's our food, the pharmaceutical companies, or whatever it is, actually backfires and more people wake up because of
Right.
this. Yes, some people are going through dark nights of the soul in which they're getting angry first, and I was angry for a long time, but I'm realizing that the period of time that you people used to be angry isn't as long anymore because it's so easy to now find content that becomes solution oriented. Whereas before, when the internet wasn't so saturated with all this awareness, you could just get lost into a rabbit hole of darkness and be stuck in there for quite some time. But there's enough information to take you out there. Now, we have people like Joe Rogan. We have mainstream coverage of UFOs and UAPs. People don't trust governments. People don't trust the power structures and the so-called elite, to the point that even when good things come out that are actually going to assist us, people often throw the baby out with the bathwater rather than seeing that actually this is a movement to a discussion that we never thought would happen before. And as I'm traveling the world, I'm nonstop meeting people that are awake to this reality from all types of countries. Now, here in South America, 100%. I'm actually, I've been traveling for 4 years, right? So I've been met a lot of people. Now I'm in Colombia right now, and I've been meeting. Actually, I've been there for 3 weeks, and I've met a lot of people, going out, connecting with people, and often, like, I can't help it. I often speak about religion, right? Are you religious? And almost all the time, 9 times out of 10, I get back, no, but I'm spiritual. I believe in the universe and astrology and consciousness, from a country that's inherently a Catholic country,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then so I was in Peru, that's even more Catholic than Colombia. And I went out on a couple of dates there. I met a couple of women, and they were both Catholic Christian. And so, and because I asked them, like, on the first date, like, what are you? And then after that, we started talking, and she's showing me a book on chakras, and she's showing me that she's reading this book on chakras and how to manifest. She's talking about all the benefits of her astrological sign and the universe. One other person was talking to me about extraterrestrials, and if I think we're alone in the universe or not. And I asked them, I said, well, you're religious, but you saying you're Catholic, but you're talking about things that are non-Catholic. And she goes, oh, believing in Jesus and being Catholic does not take away from the fact that all this is real as well, right?
Oh,
That's one
good.
great one. And I'll say one more. I was at a fitness camp in Phoenix. It was like a live-in fitness camp. I was staying in the fitness camp for 3 weeks, 6 hours of working out a day. All types of people coming in and out. And there was like one time that we were in the bus going on a hike in the morning, like at 6 a.m., and we started having a conversation about Christianity and Jesus. And one of them started talking about NDEs and near death experiencers and how he was a part of an NDE documentary many years ago with Clifford Moody. And he had been a pastor in the Air Force for the pilots. And he was like, yeah, I'm still Christian, but UFOs exist, ETs exist, consciousness is real, and there's an afterlife, and the afterlife doesn't always just include Jesus. And some other person in there was also Christian, and he was talking about, so this other guy was devout Christian, right? And he was talking about it for 2 weeks straight, like Jesus stuff, like. And then because we're only 2 hours away from Sedona, he goes, oh, I'm gonna go to Sedona this weekend because I heard they have healing chambers there and crystals and energy healing and energy work. And I'm like, the last 2 weeks, I just thought this guy was like Bible Belt Christian because
Yeah.
he even had the accent, right? So I'm even changing my perspective now to think that people ingrained in certain religions are not able to be awake to these realities. And even in the email I sent out a week ago, I said, Can it is the awakening truly about waking up to the information that's been lost to us, or is awakening about having a sense of love and compassion for yourself, love and compassion for others, and then still trying to be open to love even when the world tries to shut you down, right?
Right.
And
Well,
all three of those things I said right now can be through any person, through any religion can actually embody that, right?
right. Well, I think once you start realizing that you're creating your reality and that everything's frequency, then there is everything. Well, I guess I should reframe this. I believe that everything that happens is for our best, even though it doesn't seem like it at the time necessarily. But
Mhm.
if everything's coming to try to help us become more of who we really are and learn to love, then that victimization model that we've been fighting basically has to go away
Yeah.
because it's part of our tension to force us to go to the next step, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so I got another question for you. So about sound and vibration and frequency. You present a lot on the ancient science and future potential of sound and vibration. Why do you believe that sound is such a powerful key for awakening and healing?
Well, the best way to put it, to simplify it 100%, was the first line in the Old Testament is, in the beginning there was the word, right? And so, and then if you look at every other ancient civilization origin story, almost all of them say in the beginning was sound. This was sound. There was sound. Something was vibrating. So if every origin story, not everyone, but almost all of them, are talking about the beginning, everything was sound, and that from everything something came from sound. Why don't we spend some more time researching instead of thinking these are all mythological fictional stories? But why across the board everybody is talking about sound and frequency being the origin of it all? And so that's one component. And if the next part of these origin stories is the fact that sound became physical reality, including in the Old Testament. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, right? The Word, the sound was God, and the sound was also with God. Realize that's a paradox. How can the sound be God, but it can also be with God as a separate entity? And it was also there in the beginning, before God. Well, that's interesting. The sound existed before God. And then if you look at the Laguna Pueblo tribe in the native in North America, they say that sound created the realm of the gods. So wait, we're now even seeing across the board ancient civilizations talking about God coming from sound, that God never existed until the sound became a God, right? And then the world of the creatures, the world of humanity, all of these things coming from sound. So there's some scientific evidence put into metaphorical fiction, the metaphorical beautiful poetry in these ancient texts. But then take it further. Now let's look at it scientifically. We used to think everything is atomic, right? Atom is the smallest thing. It's a particle. It's a very small particle. But now we've seen that the atom is created as subatomic particles, and those are quantum particles. And those quantum particles are what? Constantly vibrating. Hence the term string theory, which maybe isn't a great way to explain it, but it's the way they're perceiving that everything is made out of vibrating strings, is what they call it, right? But so if now we're seeing that what we thought was physical is actually a frequency that is non-physical, that is constantly vibrating, that means we're all made out of sound, or all made out of frequency. So what does that really mean for what this reality is? First, we're not physical, but we look it and we are physical at the same time. A paradox that we can't fathom. And also, if we're not physical, what are we capable to do when we start manipulating the frequencies around us? And then everything vibrates, right? If everything is made out of atoms and as subatomic particles vibrate, including this computer, including your music, including your phone, including the EMFs, if these are all sound frequencies and they're vibrating, are frequencies able to affect other frequencies? Well, the science says yes. So if we're frequency beings and we have frequencies around us and those frequencies are affecting us, is there a possibility that those frequencies are affecting us negatively or positively? Yes, they are. And if is there a way for us to realize what the frequencies are doing to us compared to what we have based on our own belief systems and think that are our own issues rather than the fact that maybe some disharmonic frequencies are affecting us? And could we change civilization, society, technology to ensure that the frequencies and the technology we create emanate frequencies that are beneficial to us? Right? So these are all the questions that I feel we need to start really thinking about, because what we do is we unconsciously create. We A lot of times we unconsciously create. Oh, this phone is a 5G phone, and this 5G phone will allow for this to be more rapid and us to have faster connection. That's the only thing we're looking at. The bottom line: faster connection, monetization. What about, okay, what how can we do a test on what this frequency does to the brain? What does it do to the cells in the body? Does it actually create acidity in your body and cancer? And yeah, there have been scientific studies that show that a lot of these types of frequencies do that. But these scientific studies have been done on the small level, not on a huge governmental level. And even if they are discovered on a governmental level, the people that own the government are the companies that just want to be able to monetize the things that are affecting us negatively, whether it's pharmaceuticals or whether it's types of cell phone technology, satellite technology. They don't care if it's helping us or health, giving us health or not. They don't want to see that. They want to see how they can be more efficient and then how they can deal with the first rule of Econ 101. How do we make sure that our shareholders are happy? Not only the shareholders if you're openly publicly traded company, but the shareholders are the owners of the business. And how do you make sure shareholders are happy? Well, you give them better profits. So, what can you do to make sure they have better profits? Well, everything within the law that we can do in order to be able to make better profits, let's do it. Well, what's one thing that's not in the law? Take a look at how these frequencies are affecting you negatively so they don't kill you. You know what I mean? So, there's not enough regulation. So, that's a rant basically right there, but that's somewhat of why it's important.
Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier Michael Tellinger and some of the other, Nassim Harriman. You mentioned some people that have done tremendous work with sound. Michael Tellinger found these elongated rocks that are
Yeah.
like chimes, and he at one point had a theory that those elongated rocks were used to raise bigger rocks. That may have been how they built the pyramids. He also, I got to have one of those donut rocks that he
Hmm.
had that it looks like iron. It was
Hmm.
really heavy. And I got to put, it was at my office. I got to have it and put a bunch of my crystals inside it.
Mm.
Unless you could feel a toroidal energy around it.
Hmm.
And one of my friends who was a PhD, she's passed now, but she held it and she fell down. It was so strong.
Mm.
So in your experience with the ancient knowledge, I mean, these are ancient tools that they've uncovered. Michael Tellinger had uncovered in South Africa. In
Hmm.
your experience, can you share something about the ancient way that sound was used? I know in Dominher, Crotolo did a wonderful interview on Gaia TV where they showed that Falco, the originator, founder of Dominher, had gone back in time and gone back to Atlantis. And in Atlantis, they had overhangs on all the roofs of all the buildings there were like whistles that caused
Mm.
sound to go through
Wow.
the wind.
Yeah.
So I know
Exactly.
that they knew quite a bit more about sound technology than we
Yeah.
have. Have you found much of that?
Yeah. 100%. I found so much of it that in my sound presentation, I say it's easier to prove that the ancients had an advanced awareness of sound than it is to disprove it. You just can't help but look at it. Go into the king's chamber in the Giza pyramid, the main pyramid in the Giza plateau, and you feel like you're in an instrument. It's created like with acoustics in mind. Look like you're inside of a piano. There's a lot of different things. I'll just give you a couple examples here that you shared the thing about the wind. Yeah. So in ancient Egypt, in the Red Temple, in also different places around the world, including Malta, County Meath, Ireland, and so many more, probably hundreds of them, even Palenque, Mexico, and different Yucatan Mayan sites and Peruvian sites as well for the ancients there. You have certain frequencies embedded in the structure that when you go in and you chant, a frequency comes back at you. But the interesting thing is that when you don't chant, when you don't make a noise, the wind literally makes that frequency for you. So a frequency doesn't have to be audible because we only perceive a certain range of frequency hertz in our with our ears ability to hear. So they could be a different octave of the same frequency, like the note A. There can be different octaves. There's an octave in which we can hear, and then there's octaves in which we can't. So when the wind goes through there, it creates a frequency with that note, whatever the key is, in an inaudible way. Sometimes it could be audible. And then when you go in there and make some noise and chant in the Red Pyramid, for example, you could say whatever chant you want, whatever note you want. But the Red Pyramid takes all of the sound and frequency, and what does it do? It sends it back to you at the note A. You're not even singing at the note A. You're not even chanting at the note A. But the way it's structured does that for you. There's also 110 hertz frequency, which is a frequency that we find all over the place around the world. And one of the greatest discoveries is in the caves in Malta, in which the frequency there is 110 hertz in the caves, including County Meath, Ireland. When the wind goes in there, it creates 110 hertz. When you make sound in there, it creates 110 hertz. So whatever they did in order to build this, they built it to make sure that that frequency would be created. And now there's been a study with the archaeoacoustics community out of Vancouver where they went down to the County Meath, Ireland, they went down to Malta, and they tested these frequencies. They went in there and they had what kind of experiences that they would have with this frequency in there. They had out of body experiences, they had astral travel type experiences, they had meditative experiences. They put EEG machines and wires on their head to see what that frequency would do while they're in there. And then in a laboratory setting, put the same frequency and see what would happen. And the part of your brain that was responsible for overthinking calmed down. The part of your brain that was responsible for visualizations and meditation went bigger, including the parts of your brain responsible for psychedelic experiences, almost like cultivating a psychedelic experience. So, what were these caves used for around the world? These structures, these pyramids, were they used for meditation? Were they used for communication? Were they used to communicate with gods? Because a lot of times when you have psychedelically induced experiences, you're able to have divine revelations and realizations. So it seemed like that they were using for that as well. But just to drill home a little more how advanced you have to be, say that right now I bought a bunch of architects together, right? And I said, build me a structure underground and make sure you use the right type of rock and make sure you put all the rocks in the right place, that after you're done, when the wind goes through this structure, it's going to hit exactly 110 hertz. But in this room right here, we want you to use different rocks so it creates a double tone frequency simultaneously of 110 hertz and 118 hertz. Go, right? It's pretty much impossible unless you are at such a high level of consciousness that you already can fathom the outcome of what you're creating. You already know what the outcome would be, and then you build towards it. You need to think multidimensionally. And the reason why I feel we can't notice technology in these things, a lot of people can't, they're just like dumbfounded. And then they're like, where's the technology? Is because the level of consciousness that you have to be at in order to create such an advanced structure is so incredibly high that most of humanity right now is not at a level to even fathom it as actual technology.
Um, well, so your interest in sound not only is because you're highly sensitive, but it's also as a way to bring in
Feel,
truth. I mean,
yeah, okay.
you
Feel,
do music.
truth, feel, activate, communicate, but heal would be the number one
Yep.
because we have all types of illnesses and sicknesses in the world, and frequency technology can heal it. The way it works is we create a acid, lactic acid in our brain. That brain acid goes around our brain, creates an electrical current. That electrical current is now a frequency that then goes down our spine. As it goes down our spine, it travels and creates electrical current that then goes to all of the organs in our body. Now we're alive because our brain is a battery creating an electrical current going down our spine through our nervous system to what? Our chakra centers that then fuel electricity and frequencies to our body, which is why you're not dead until you're brain dead, because when you're brain dead, guess what happens? The frequency stops, right?
Yeah, yeah,
When you have certain illnesses and sicknesses, what's going on? Oh, the frequency going through your spine has now been shifted, and the vibration to your organs and the electrical current that should be at a consistent rate is no longer working. This is just one level of frequency healing. So when we can calculate what the right frequency is, and then just like a tuning fork, when you hit one tuning fork, the one right next to it all of a sudden vibrates at the same frequency. If we can match those frequencies and align those areas in our body, we can thereby correct through frequency technology the right type of energy that's supposed to go to our organ so that it can run at its full potential, thereby healing not all the diseases, but many diseases. There's other types of frequency technology. For example, I show in my presentation where they have used sound technology and ultrasound bubbles to capture cancer cells and then destroy them through the frequencies of sound inside you, right? And all of these are non-intrusive, non-invasive. You don't they don't have any side effects. You can't die from them. You know what I mean? So I feel one of the biggest uses for us realizing sound frequency is such a huge component of reality is us coming to a place where we could heal a lot of sicknesses and create longevity for us.
and that way we can become active co-creators of the new world too, because when you don't have the energy to do anything, you don't have the possibility to be creative.
Mhm.
I'm really interested in your your insights. Well, first of all, I want to, before I go there, I want you to, could you share a little bit about your music? Because I don't know that everyone knows about your beautiful poetry and music that you do. Could you share a little bit about that before I go off to another?
Yeah. So, when I first started getting to this awareness, I started creating poetry a long time ago when I was 16. And then when I was 18, it turned into like poetry on consciousness, ET's ancient history, but a lot about my own spiritual struggles really in the early years. And then I started realizing that I could create poetry and spoken word poetry in particular that can convey big topics like the way a black hole works, quantum physics, visitations from different planets, history in poetic form, and I would start performing it. 2008, I started performing it quite a lot, and then over the last 7 or 8 years or so, if not longer, it morphed into hip hop. So now I've taken that poetry into rap music, and we create. And not only do I have a couple spoken word albums, but I have two hip hop albums as well that are really just like next level consciousness music that take you into journeys. I kind of feel like it's like a almost like hip hop meets poetry meets a psychedelic journey, but all through sound. And so I do that, and my dream has always been to do that more full time. So we're actually creating. I'll give you a quick plug here. Myself a quick plug. Next year we're going on tour with our first event in Greece on April 2nd next year. And you can check it out at healthemusictour.com, which is a multi-sensory spoken word hip hop ecstatic dance experience with fractal geometry, all types of amazing things. And so it's just been a dream of mine to start doing that, and we're going to start doing that next year. And I go by MC Resonance. So you can check me out on YouTube, and but please actually check me out on Spotify because I have quite a few songs there. I'm actually going to the studio next week. We're creating a whole new album. We're creating a Dragon Light Language hip hop album starting next week. And I'm not going to explain what that means, but it's going to be really cool. It's a lot of codes in the music as well. So love if you guys can support me on that. I don't have enough time to promote my music, So if you guys want to check it out, look me up on Spotify.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I know we don't have a lot more time, but I wanted to ask your opinion about what's happening right now with disclosure. I mean, a lot of your your work and the benefit that you've offered on your platform has been ancient civilizations and ties to our true future, which includes galactic. I mean, even your name now, you've got Neil Arcturus Gar. I could have Kathy Arcturian Mason to tell
I
you the
know,
truth.
right?
Yeah. But
Yep.
anyway, but could you give us a little bit of your insight of what you think's happening right now
Yeah.
in disclosure?
Yeah. So basically, there was, I mean, it's a really long story because I like to get it from the beginning, but I'll try to summarize it. There was a time where it was ridiculed. There's been an 80. I'm bullet pointing it. There's been 80 plus years of UFO cover up, and the last documented time was 1930, where they had a UFO crash retrieval in Italy. Mussolini found it. U.S. government took over the craft. There's been corporations that have received these crash retrievals or even donated UFOs that have just been found and discovered that aren't crashed. They reverse engineer technology. A lot of the governments, they give the technology to Lockheed Martin, Bigelow Aerospace, because two things. One, if it's a private company, they can keep the technology private. And two, they can have this private company work on different types of technology and reverse engineering for the government. Fast forward until 2016, this whole thing was ridiculed. Um, um, Lots of different Project Mockingbird and a lot of different types of hit campaigns to make sure that people who were into this looked insane and crazy. And then in 2016, it shifted, and they decided to start dripping this disclosure out as if they were the ones figuring it all out. And it was partly because there was so much evidence and information coming out that they couldn't hide it anymore. And there was such a huge push for this truth to come out. And maybe on some level, there's a knowing that there's going to be a day everybody knows we're not alone in the universe. And because there's been so much lies and cover up, when people start really realizing the extent of the lies, cover up, manipulation, and deaths that have occurred to hide this story and this topic, a lot of people are going to be upset. For example, what would you do if you knew that that a disease for cancer existed 20 years ago, a cure for AIDS existed when AIDS was in its heyday back in the 80s, and people you loved and cared for died when they didn't have to because corporations and governments were trying to hide a truth to you. But what would you do if you knew that they even knew a greater truth, that we're not alone in the universe and we've been visited and we are being visited, and that there's a connection to our ancestry that goes beyond any religion has on this planet, right? This is all out there. So on one level, they're like, okay, it's time to release it. On another level, there's people that are useful idiots, so to speak, in government, and then there's also people that are in government that have no idea that this was going on, but all of a sudden heard something about it, and now they're like, wait a second, I thought I knew everything. I thought I had top secret clearance, and maybe on some level, their egos are helping us because they're like, hey, that's not fair. We're Congress. We have top secret clearance. You're saying there's a clearance beyond us? I want to know what it is. Let's rally together to figure it out. And that's a very oversimplification of where we're at right now. And now, every single year to a year and a half or so, there seems to be a hearing where we get a little bit more and a little bit more. And this last hearing that happened just a few days ago obviously is an important one because we're getting a little closer now to, whoa, we can maybe start moving away from saying that this can be a foreign adversary, or maybe can start moving away just from saying that this is an unmanned drone, and moving into something else. They're taking a long time, 9 years to really start saying like, who are these beings, but we're getting there. People are starting to talk about it now. There's conversations even on Joe Rogan about reptilian, the mantis beings that some Air Force pilot was on there last year speaking about, right? Earlier this year. So that's where we're at with the disclosure. And now, just to finish off here, within the next 2 years, this I think by 2027 to 2028, there's going to be a worldwide awareness we're not alone in the universe. When we start opening up to that awareness we're not alone, now our consciousness shifts to be open to a bigger picture. There's a settling in phase that is taking place for us to realize that. And as we settle into the realization we're not alone, then the next step is open contact and communication with other beings.
Yay.
Mhm,
Well, I feel like I've known that there's been other beings and that I've been in communication with them since I was 8 years old. So,
mhm.
so the fact the fact that the powers that be that want to talk about it, that's one thing. But I really think that the phones, I mean, we talked about 5G and everything, but the phones are really what's causing humanity. It's not coming from the government, it's coming from the population, because they can capture pictures anytime they want. I was at an event last, I think it was last October, where I was able, with my naked eye, see ships that were called in. And there is video footage of it that was taken through somebody's device and a certain light, black light. I don't know what light it was. Infrared maybe, but anyway, I saw it with my naked eye, and I'm jumping up and down like yay. So I think that disclosure is imminent. It's funny because I think if a craft landed right behind me in the back area, I would probably run to it. Gaur would run away.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
So that's the thing is it's just like our reality. We have to see whether we trust that everything's here for us and that it's part of our evolutionary spiral, or if it's because if these are beings that could land right here, and if all that technology, they could have gotten rid of humanity a long time ago, right?
Exactly, and that's what's being said. Yeah. So it's beautiful times right now. So much amazing things gonna happen, and I'm just excited to be here for the ride.
Yep. Well, I know you're short on time. Do we have a few more minutes, or?
I only have 1 minute. I have my other chanting class starting in 2 minutes.
Okay, so why don't you, if you wouldn't mind sharing your sites and things that are coming up that people might be interested in real quick.
Sure. So check me out at portal2ascension.org. Okay. We sign up there for a newsletter. We have a lot going on. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/youtube.com/. Portal to Ascension. We have a lot of content there, and I'd like to also share New Living Expo. So we're doing a massive expo every single year. It's in the Marin County in the Bay Area, just 40 minutes from San Francisco. That's newlivingexpo.com. So check it all out. But if you sign up on our newsletter on our main website, you'll definitely you'll get all the updates on everything we're creating.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited that I got to be with you, and I hope I get to be with you again, although I'm not going to Columbia very soon. But thank you, and have a wonderful class after this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah,
Okay, see you soon. Take care.
Yeah, take care.